and welcome to our Sequester Season 4 recap for the penultimate episode of the season. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and joining me today is Isaiah. How you doing, Isaiah?
I'm good, Taran. I thought that was a really good episode of Sequester. A lot shorter than I'm used to, but I mean, we got through it.
We certainly did. Also joining me, she's been talked about this season. She played last season. It's Jess from season 3 of Sequester. How you doing?
I'm doing well. And you know what? I have been preparing for 2 months, 1,300 jumping jacks every day to do this podcast. So I don't know if that's going to help me, but I want everyone to know that I love jumping jacks or jump rope or whatever.
Yes. Okay. Good to know. You came prepared. You also were robbed, as per is canon, according to this season. This is now that Spencer has said it. So here we are to talk about this episode. It was, I believe, the shortest episode of the season thus far, at just about 40 minutes long. I've got to say, personally, I thought that was fun. I don't know if there was a lot more to do in this episode. So coming in, getting out, I thought it worked.
I don't think you need to add buffer. Like if Audrey tried to fill in random stuff just to get to be an hour, like that's the kind of boring things that fans are like over, or 20 minutes of fighting at the end of the episode. Like we were kind of complaining about that. So Audrey, I feel like, was listening to us and she put all the good juice into the episode, and it was like a quick, fast episode, but had all the important stuff. So I loved it.
Yes. Did you like this juice, Isaiah?
Yeah, I agree with Jessica. I just liked how it just went straight to the point. It could have easily went left, and it could have just been like the whole Big Brother episode where they had a whole challenge full of like their characters fighting on the screen or something like that. But instead of all this filler content, we just got straight to the point. We got to the meat and bones of it, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I can imagine it now, where like that montage that they did about the final 6. Instead, it's like a 20-minute long, like, man, remember when we started this game 4 days ago? It was we were so innocent. We could have,
Remember when Josh was looking for LOSs upstairs, like random stuff that Big Brother always tries to force in there. It's like, why are we reminiscing on this?
Jess, you could have showed up to be like, hey guys, I'm here to host your remembrance episode.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Isaiah.
How awkward would that have been? Because like they can't even like talk. Like there's barely any downtime during the season. I've noticed, since they can't speak to anybody when the challenges aren't going on or anything. So imagine you just got done with all that fighting, and they're like, "Oh, let's have this remembrance episode. Let's pretend that we're not beefing. Let's just, we love each other. All this fun stuff." But yeah, that would have been crazy.
Yeah. Well, we start the episode. There are a couple of things I really liked about the presentation of this episode. One was that we did get a nice sort of like recap of, or reset of, like, Jacob is going to Luxury Row. That's because he won the battle match, and he's going to have a 1 in 3 chance of, getting, the power that he had before again. I feel like I don't know if I remember seeing this in the past. Maybe I just have glossed over it, but like seeing Sequester Bot on the screen telling us what we're about to see to sort of like give us that context. I liked that.
I think someone said during a podcast that I was watching recently that they said that, I think it was during Final Four last season, that they did something like this. I could be wrong, but yeah, I thought it was good to just get the little recap of each person's little personal path, because honestly, if you're just like a casual watcher almost, and you just need that little refresher, this definitely would help somebody like that.
Yes. And also, as Joseph says in the chat, that this is the last round for advantages to be used. I think it was especially relevant to the episode that we get a reset on what the advantages are, and that this is the last round to play them, because they're definitely going to end up being pretty important to how the round plays out. So Jacob does not manage to get his battle pass back. Although, Jess, I can't imagine what this round would have looked like if he had.
I have been wondering that too. Even when Muna had said she got the battle pass, I'm like, how does that work? Because there's only 3 people safe. Like, are we just going to throw out all the advantages at once? Like, there's going to be one LOS played, then another LOS played, then the final advantage played, and nobody goes home this week. Like, it would have been way too much. So I love Jacob, but I think it would have been too hectic. I'm kind of glad that he didn't get it.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a shade of advantage getting here, or at least it had the possibility for one. Luckily, Sequester Bot did not open the episode with a whiteboard to be like, all right, so this, if you're confused at home, this is what's happening, because that would have been, I think, a little much. But we didn't run into that problem. We did open the episode. Jacob comes back. I always forget that they don't know who won the battle match at the start of the episode. I'm always like, oh, they still don't know. So Jacob is gonna waltz back in, and of course, you can see on Muna's face that she is just like, damn it.
I think honestly, Natalie was like the only person who would have even been okay with like Jacob coming back into the game, because everyone else seemed to get their like mixed feelings. Like, you had Josh, who was basically saying how he wanted Jacob out. You got Muna, who literally they just had an argument, and then Billy's going to ride for Muna no matter what. I think maybe even Spencer could have that would have been his shield, but I think Natalie was the only one that was okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think after after Marcelo called Josh out in the previous episode, maybe Josh was like, well, at least Marcelo's not here to tell me that it's not nighttime. But yes, I'm sure he also wants Jacob gone, as we saw in this episode. And we quickly get to the twist for the round, I guess, which is a competition for the round. And often we do this in Sequester, where toward the end of the game, final 6, final 5, there's some kind of immunity challenge. And this is going to be the challenge here. I've actually been hoping to see a challenge like this on Sequester that is, it's a social strategy challenge where you're dumping, in this case, I guess, sand, was it, into tubes to fill up safety bars, and you can't dump them into your own tube. So the 3 people who get their tubes filled up the fastest will end up being safe, and the other 3 will be vulnerable. I liked the idea for this challenge, but I definitely felt like 3 was too many to be safe in a round of 6. You agree, Jess?
That's exactly how I felt when I started watching the competition. Shout out to Jake Round. That the competitions were this episode, both competitions were amazing. Loved them. But then I'm like, ooh, 3 safe in the final 6. Like, I didn't even like in the final 6 when Dustin was safe 1 person, because even that changes the whole aspect of the round. So to have 3 people safe in the final 6 was just way too much for me. I felt like not only did it slice the gameplay in half, it also sliced the entertainment in half of the episode, because some people were like Natalie at halfway through, she's like, I know either way I'm not getting put in the, well, she was one of the people, but you know what I mean, like halfway through some people were like, I don't even have to worry this round, so then it's not as entertaining. I like when everyone's scrambling,
Exactly. And I feel like because to me it was like, oh, 3 people, that's a lot, and I hadn't even thought yet about the fact that they're also safe from the battle match.
Mm-hmm.
And once I realized that, I was like, oh, really? No. Because it really, really limits the options that the players have to campaign. I can imagine a scenario where, Jacob or Muna are able to threaten one of the other 3 with a drag. Hey, don't vote for me or I'll drag you. And you know what? I have an LOS too, so there's a bunch of different possibilities that can happen. She could maybe, if it's not like definitely going to be her or Jacob, because there are lots of other options open, maybe she can start to make some kind of deal with him. There are just a lot more other options that the players have when the game is more open. And so I feel like closing it off so much was not the right call. I could maybe see a scenario where these 3 are safe from the vote, but they are not safe from the drag. That could have been interesting. But it definitely felt like it was a bit closed off here, Isaiah.
Yeah, I agree. And it just makes me think of the possibility that what if Jacob did get that power and then you have the three people already safe? Muna has an LOS. The only person that would have been open for anything would have been Natalie. And, it just, three people is just way too much at this point. Maybe if they just did like two or just even one, but it was just way too many people.
Yeah. The competition was interesting, though. It was fun watching. I particularly liked Josh's strategy in this competition, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise at this point because he's continued to impress all season long. But his strategy is he's gonna constantly call out, and I think the part I liked about his strategy the most was when he said he would make a deal, 1-for-1, but then he would only pour half of his sand into theirs. Yeah. That's what I liked the most because he was doing it pretty cleanly too, where like, oh, accidentally, most of my sand is coming out of this as I'm pouring. I'm just going too fast, guys. Meanwhile, you see Billy like conducting a science experiment, like dumping tiny little bits into each tube. But I like that aspect of it. I definitely was like the call out of like, hey, 1-for-1, let's trade off. I was like, that could backfire. But it didn't seem like it did. And Josh was very successful here, Jessica.
I completely agree. I found it so funny because you could see him like watching the person that was pouring into his. And then when they run to get more, he'd like kind of pour it out the side, so it was like not getting into the tube. Like he was, and Josh, I love him so much because I feel like every single thing he does is strategic. He's so strategic, but it comes off so casual. And the 1-for-1 thing I thought was so smart because this is the biggest game of showing like your cards socially, and by being like, hey Jacob, 1-for-1, hey Billy, 1-for-1, it's like, oh, you're not really showing who you're working with because you're calling out in front of the whole group and it looks like you're just kind of worried about yourself. So I thought that was like a great like low-key strategy that he played there.
Yeah, for sure. We're also going to see that Billy's tube is going to be filled up pretty quickly. That is obviously going to be down to her social game. And also we heard that some people were hoping to get her out of the game early so that she wouldn't be able to fill Muna's tube up too much because they wanted to make sure that Muna was not safe in this round. That was one of the sort of twists of this competition, is that once you become safe, you can no longer pour sand into anybody else's tubes. I didn't actually see this come into play, though. I don't know exactly how it worked, but it seemed like it ended with all three people just having their tubes at 100% out of nowhere. and some of them seem to have the sand above the line. I was very confused about the ending. I'm gonna talk about how well they did the ending of a challenge at the end of this episode, but this was not that. This was a little bit what I've complained about before, which is like it just kind of ends sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely felt like at the end of the challenge, it was just kind of like they just like cut it short a little bit. Like we didn't really get to see like the reactions of the people being safe or anything. They just kind of jumped right back into the house afterwards. So I would have liked to see it. I would have liked to see the little interactions of people being like, oh, like, did you feel this person's up first before mine because of da 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 da? I don't know. But yeah, I think that execution could have been a little bit better there.
Mm-hmm. So Billy's gets filled up, and then the other one that gets filled up here is Spencer, who has managed to integrate himself into the Muna and Billy group. Now, from Billy's perspective, Billy tells us that she's looking out for Muna and Josh and a little bit Spencer. Spencer is like, Billy's my person. And so it's a little confusing what this dynamic is, but it seems like Billy is more Team Josh than Team Spencer, but Spencer is all in on Billy. And that's a pretty good place for Billy to be. It's not a terrible place for Josh to be either. But Josh is also telling us that he needs to make sure, and this is a little bit later in the episode, that Natalie is safe because he feels like she's the person that he can beat in the end, which tells us, of course, that he's feeling uncomfortable about going up against Spencer, Billy, Muna, and Jacob, all of them, and that he'd rather go up against Natalie, which probably is a decent call, but I'm still not sure how I feel about Spencer's chances with the jury. So, Jess, I'm very curious to hear from you about your thoughts here on Spencer, who he did say you were robbed. So I don't know if there's some bias that's going to come into play here.
I love Spencer. I actually am friends with Spencer from before the season started, but I will not be biased. And I think if I were somebody still in the game, I would want to take Spencer to the end because I would think that the jury doesn't really like or respect him. However, I think a big sign was that when the jury had a choice to pick two people to put up for elimination, they didn't pick him. So it's like, oh, he does kind of have a redeeming story arc there. The jury doesn't seem to be that bitter with him anymore. So I think it's kind of like, I think him and Natalie are kind of in the same position where you take them and it could be a risk. You don't really know how the jury views them, but it's better than taking somebody like Billy or Muna who you know the jury respects and like is obsessed with their game.
Yeah, for sure. Isaiah, do you have thoughts here on Spencer?
Yeah, so realistically speaking, I think he has the highest battle right now to get any kind of like winning equity within the game, because honestly his social game early game really just wasn't good, and like it did some really long-term damage. I think the past 3 episodes he's just kind of been like working it back, and maybe he's getting himself in a better favor with some individuals inside the house. So if he sits next to someone like a Natalie, maybe he can convince some of those people to give him their votes. But I don't think that I personally, I don't see a scenario where Spencer has like a majority vote, if that makes any sense. It's just like compared to everyone else, I just think that they have at least like some sort of like story or just like a group of people who like worked with them long enough to like they can grasp their votes.
Yeah, it feels like he has struggled with developing personal bonds with a lot of the people in the house, which is definitely going to be a negative. I think his biggest selling point is the 3, battle match wins that he has so far. But that can be a positive and a negative depending on how you look at it. If I'm on the jury, I'm probably looking at it as a negative, like you got voted in 3 times in a row, bro. But some people like Bobby in a previous podcast would think it was impressive. So it's take it or leave it at that point. But I do think that he has crawled out of the hole that he dug for himself at least a little bit by working with Muna and Billy. And I think it's easy to criticize him for doing so, and I still will, because he's still talking about going to the end with Billy, which is still not the right call. But the fact that he has been able to reconcile with Muna and work with Muna and Billy, I think will help his odds if he does make it to the end with somebody other than Billy, as long as, it wasn't by his hand, right? Like say if somebody like Josh or even Jacob, or even Natalie, end up taking out Billy for him, and then he finds himself sitting in the end next to Natalie, Josh, or even possibly Jacob, depending on how Muna and Billy and the jury are feeling about Jacob after everything that's happened. You can start to see a scenario where it's possible that we could see Spencer winning some jury votes. But I do agree with Jess as well, where I feel like if I had to choose between anyone left in the game, who do I want to sit next to? I'm probably still picking Spencer. Just like I'd sit next to this guy and I'd be like, guys, do you remember round 4? Like, do you remember this is the guy that said, hey, watch out, I'm gonna pick the weak players. Shireen and Rachel, I'm gonna pick those guys. Do you think this is the guy that has the better social game than you think this is the guy that should win this season? I don't know. It's an uphill battle, I think.
I'm never going to forget when he told Braden to his face that, or Brandon to his face, he's like, yeah, I'm going to pick you during that little tether round. Yeah, he's digging himself out of there, but it's just such a hard, I don't see it. I don't see it.
So that's where Spencer says we haven't really seen much from the jury since before the buyback. And Brent is there, Brendan is there now, and Muna, are those the three? Am I missing somebody? Marcelo, of course.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of new members, but it's pretty clear that the jury is very much on the side of Muna and Billy. Muna ends up leaving at the end of this episode, which means I would imagine they're still very much on the side of Billy. I think the question then becomes, are the players left in the game aware of this? I think that Muna was not only a great shield for Billy, having come back and being immune and having all these powers in the game strategically, but also a great shield for Billy jury-wise, because the players in the house are looking at Billy, or looking at Muna as like the jury favorite, and seeing Billy as the person who will lose sitting next to Muna, not realizing necessarily that Billy is also very beloved by the jury because Muna's there to kind of eat up all the spotlight. And that could be very beneficial to Billy here in the final stretch. There's not a lot of time left to realize that the jury is really with her if they haven't already. So the question is, Isaiah, do you think they realize this?
I would hope so. I mean, the jury literally gave Billy that safety, so I think that
They
would
never
click
found
something
out,
in
though.
your mind. I would hope so. I would hope so. Like, I think players like Josh have showed me that they can adjust and like they can read the situation a little bit. So I think at least overnight. For example, if you look at Spencer last episode, he was talking about how he wanted to go deep with Muna, and then something clicked with him now to make him believe like, oh, like Muna needs to leave, right? So I would think they would at least understand that Muna's like the people's champion, whether you're in or outside of the jury, and she has like a good, like she basically can like control like a narrative for the jury to like believe something. So if they know that Muna and Billy is close and like, oh, like she just like, oh, Billy is just playing a great game. Like, we need to vote Billy to win. Like, I will hope something would click in their mind to be like, all right, if Muna can convince these people that Billy's playing such a great game, like, we need to get her out. So, she doesn't get all the votes.
Yeah. And I think that something to worry about as well, if you are a player in this game, is even discounting the jury situation. If you're at a Final Four, and just to reset what the Final Four is, once you reach the Final Four, all four players have a vote, and it's a straight vote. You just cast your vote. The person with the most votes is eliminated, but on their way out the door, they turn around and they go, you're coming with me. They get to pick whoever they want. They drag somebody out with them, which ultimately determines the final two. Now, of course, what this ultimately will, or should at least often lead to, is a deadlock, a tie, where they will spin a wheel, and then the wheel will determine who gets eliminated, and that person will end up dragging somebody out from the remaining three players. So with that in mind, somebody like Billy is not somebody that you want in the Final Four, because who is going to drag Billy? Billy is the person probably with the best social game in the house, one of the more likable players to everyone else, and has had the most amount of friends in the house. She's somebody that you might vote out at the Final Four because you're worried she'll beat you in a jury vote. But if you're already out of the game and you have nothing else left to lose, you're probably not going to drag Billy. You're probably going to drag one of the other people that you don't like as much. And that's a very dangerous thing to have in the Final Four. So there's a lot of reason to take Billy out here at the Final Five, and then a lot of reason to vote her out at the Final Four. But if she survives those 2 rounds, I think that lock it in here, Jess. I think she'll win.
Yeah, here's the thing. Billy is in such a good position because, number one, I think one of the best things about her is her acting skills. Like when Muna says that she has an LOS at the end and Billy's like, oh, what? Like, it's just, that was so funny to me. And then also when she goes and talks to Spencer and Josh, and Billy and Muna and Billy had already spoken, and Muna was like, you can vote for me. That's totally fine. But then she goes to Josh and Spencer and she's like, I'm really going against Muna if I do this. This is huge. So you guys better be loyal to me. Like, this is big. I'm really upset if I do this. But Muna already told her she could. So her acting skills are like, bravo. And I think that matched with now Muna going into the jury, like something that I struggled with is I wish I would have told people that were going into the jury, like what I was doing in the game, you know, so that they could go tell the jury like, oh, Jessica's doing this, and this behind the scenes. Muna is now going into the jury and she can let everybody know, like, you know, Billy has this, and this on her resume. Like she has people that are going to defend her in the jury. And also nobody that's playing the game is really catching on to what she's doing and they all trust her. So I think she's in like the perfect position.
Yeah. And I think to the credit of the move that they make in this episode where Muna does tell Billy, hey, go ahead and vote for me, that not only, you know, is she like, oh, you better be loyal to me because of this, but it also gives them a little bit of reason to believe that Muna won't be stumping for Billy in the jury house because she betrayed her, you know, like they're clearly not that close. We all did the same thing. Now, again, it's not something that I think they should take a risk on. But it definitely, I did really like that move. It's a weird one to like because it may have cost Muna the game here, but it may have given Billy the game, and it was Muna's idea. But so it's like it's hard to like. Where exactly does the credit lie here? Somewhere in between. The credit goes to friendship, guys. The power of friendship may have won Billy this game. So that's where they stand there. The round, of course, is going to be between Natalie, Jacob, and Muna, and nobody else can be put into the battle match. So there's very little to sort of be suspenseful about here because we pretty much know the outcome. But there are a couple of different plans that are going to come into play. Immediately, Jacob is going to tell Natalie and Spencer that that Muna has an LOS and that it's very important that they vote her out so that they burn it because if they don't, then she will be immune from the battle match. And that would be terrible for certainly Natalie and anyone else that wants Muna out this round, or at least the possibility for Muna to go out this round. And that is pretty quickly going to spread. And the idea comes into play here. Yes, we're going to put the votes on Muna, but Josh has slightly different plans for this. Josh does want the votes to fall on Muna, but he wants to make sure that there are also 2 votes on Jacob to make sure that Natalie isn't the person that the votes fall on once Muna uses the LOS. So to try and make this a little less confusing, Muna using the LOS means that she is immune from the votes, and then the person with the second most votes, which in this case is Jacob, if Josh's plan goes through, is then the person that gets voted out. Then Muna does not have the LOS to protect herself from being dragged into the battle match. Whereas if all the votes went on Muna, if all 5 of the votes go on Muna, and then Muna, makes them void by using the LOS, then Muna, her 1 vote for Natalie would make Natalie the person with the second most votes. She would be the one voted out, and now she would have to choose who she's battling, and it would be Natalie versus Muna instead of Jacob versus Muna, which is not ideal for Josh because he wants to make sure that at least one of Jacob or Muna leave, and he wants to make sure that Natalie stays in the game. So that's the play here, and it works out. It's a little bit risky though, because there are a few different ways that this can go. If you screw with the votes, then you might find yourself in a situation where somebody flips, say Billy, who doesn't realize probably that if she and Muna vote together that they could have saved Muna. That's the real risk of this play, right? Because if they realize it, then they there is a missed opportunity here. Because 3 votes go on Muna, 2 go on Jacob, and 1 goes to Natalie. if Billy pulls her vote from Muna and Muna pulls her vote from Natalie and they both stack onto Jacob, then now it's a 4-2 vote, and Jacob is the one voted out. And Muna doesn't even need to use her LOS, which means she can use it to protect herself from the dragon. Jacob is forced to drag Natalie into the battle match. So there's a lot that goes into it, even though it's a very simple round. There's a lot of different ways that it could go based on the way that they present these votes. Jess, how did you feel about Josh's plan?
I didn't think it was necessarily executed perfectly because, number one, when he talked to Natalie about it, she immediately caught on to what he was doing. She's like, okay, you want me here because you want me to be a goat that you could bring to the end. So I feel like that kind of like brought mistrust with her relationship with Josh. So that wasn't great on his end. And then when he was talking to Spencer and he's like, you need to vote Jacob so that we can keep Natalie for me. Like, he didn't really tell Spencer why it was good for him to keep Natalie. And I feel like that's kind of where he dropped the ball there, because I was watching, like, why would Spencer do that? Like, he works with Jacob more than Natalie. So I don't think it was like a perfect execution, but I saw what he was doing.
Yeah. There were a couple different things, I think, that a couple different alternatives to this plan that he might have been able to make. One, I think, is that he could have just put one vote onto Jacob. He could have just let everyone else vote Muna, make sure everyone else votes Muna, and then place one vote on Jacob. One ends up on Natalie. Then now it's a tie. And now when you break the tie, everyone's going to put their votes onto Jacob because that's the play. Everyone wants to do that anyway. So that's a little bit safer because now if Muna, pulls votes onto Jacob, at worst, it's now a tie with Muna involved, and they can revote Muna out, and now everything's fine again. So it's a little safer that way. But perhaps he's worried that Billy doesn't go with him, and then Billy ends up going with Muna on to Natalie. And now there's 2 votes on Natalie again. But if you're worried that you don't have Billy, then your other play won't work anyway. So there's different ways that can go. And then, of course, Josh still has his LOS from round 1. And so that means that he has options here, and he presents those options to Natalie. One of the options is, hey, if you end up getting picked for the battle match, I'll toss you the LOS. You can be safe. I think another play could have been to play the LOS on Natalie for the vote and let all of the other votes fall onto Muna, which means that Jacob is basically automatically eliminated by the vote because 2 LOSs are played on Muna and Natalie. And now Jacob is obviously going to choose Muna to battle instead of Natalie. Now, Josh doesn't know that for sure. Jacob did not pick Jacob did not pick Muna in the previous round to battle. He didn't even bother to check to see if she was immune. He didn't even bother to try to flush the LOS. So there's some reason to believe that Jacob might not actually go through with that. So there are a lot of different ways that Josh can go about this. Ultimately, he goes with this plan, and it ends up working. So I think that we got to give him some kudos here, Isaiah.
I agree. And just to touch up on something that I think we didn't even speak about was Natalie was actually thinking about not even having the LOS used on her.
Well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. The plan. See, the issue with Final Six and with all these like alternative plans and all these advantages and the 3 safeties is just like there's just a bunch of scenarios, as Jose would say. There's just a bunch of scenarios out there. So I can see what his mindset was with like all these different pathways, but honestly, you just got to play in the moment at that point because anything could have went wrong here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so we should talk about it. So Josh presents this idea to Natalie that, hey, if you do get chosen, don't worry, I will give you the LOS to keep you safe. Natalie is not super pleased about this, and I can understand why she wouldn't be pleased about it, because it's basically, Josh is basically giving away the fact that he sees her as his easiest beat, and he's trying to protect her in the game, and she's worried that other people will see the same thing, that other people in the game see her as a goat, and that the jury will ultimately form the same opinion. I think that's fair. But when she starts to say, like, maybe I shouldn't accept the LOS, that's when personally I'm like, I don't know about that. That seems like, what are you doing there? because again, if I'm on the jury and somebody declines an LOS and goes into a battle match willingly, they're not getting my jury vote. Like, no, it's over. I don't care if you like you think that that's going to like that's like, you know, that's like Wu taking Tony. Like, you're doing the honorable thing. Is that what you think? I don't understand, but I'm not into it.
In my mind, I think what she was thinking is, since Muna's been projecting that this is a jury full of sharks and they want to see big moves, I think that she was thinking that, like, all right, since the jury possibly won't respect my under the radar game, I need to do something like big, and maybe a battle could like be the big thing for me. But you're just like playing with fire at that point. You just got to take the safety. Like, I honestly, if, like you said, if I was a jury member, I would honestly respect the fact that someone's willing to play an LOS on me, and telling me beforehand. Like, she was legit the only person, at least from what we've seen, that Josh has told about the LOS. So, you know, I hope it wasn't an impulsive decision, and like maybe she was just talking for the confessional.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm sure this was just kind of like, they do these confessionals like after the round ends anyway, so it's not like she was in the middle of the round like, should I not accept it? It was probably more like after the fact, like, it's annoying that he did that. Like, maybe if he did that, I wouldn't have accepted it, but I don't think she would have accepted it. And I think that it counters the narrative of her game as well, to be like, well, you know, I avoided almost every battle match, and I was like flying under the radar on purpose to some degree, and I was working the strategy that I needed to work. That gets countered when you're like, and then I declined an LOS to intentionally go into a like, wait, that's a different, that tells me that you were struggling to be visible, and that you made like a Hail Mary desperate play to be visible. So you know, I need to comment on it because she said it. I'm sure she wouldn't have done it, but I was not a fan, Jess.
I do have to say, I feel like once you get to this point in the game, like, I remember my mind was just thinking of every possible outcome of like every round. Like, your mind becomes so thinking of every strategy. And there are some confessionals I'm so glad Audrey didn't show of me, where I'm just like losing my mind, because you're just like in there thinking, you're just rambling, and you're thinking of everything and you don't know what's going on, and you are like, oh, is the jury gonna look at me bad if I don't like do a battle again, because Spencer's battled 3 times, Jacob's battled 2 times, like there's all these people that battle more than me, and you know, she's probably just like going crazy in her mind. It's the one time she can actually talk about her game out loud, because she's probably been sitting there for 6 hours in her head going through all these strategies after the round has been over, waiting for her confessional to happen. So I do chalk it up to like a moment of just rambling strategy and like kind of being nervous. But if that were to happen, I agree, that would not be a great play.
Yes. Okay. So we also see that, as I believe, Isaiah, you might have queued it up earlier, that Spencer has now decided that he does not want to be in the end with Muna. This was very surprising. I mean, it wasn't surprising to hear because it's, you know, obvious. But it's surprising to see from Spencer, because it seems to contradict what we've seen in the past couple of episodes, where he's been talking about how, you know, the big threats like him and Muna should end up in the end together. And he said those things in confessionals. So to see him do a quick 180 on this was a little bit like, wait, where did this come from? Like, I would have liked to see it explained maybe a little bit better. But I was happy to see it in the sense that, you know, I don't have to rag on Spencer this episode. He did good.
I really think that the last challenge with the whole jury voting and all that, I think that really opened some people's eyes, and it just made them completely like change directions with strategy. And I think there were also comments where they were saying that like, oh, like you can hear the jury like laughing and reacting to different people doing different things, but specifically with Muna, I just think that all the jury interaction within the game just got to players' minds, and they're like, all right, I know that I want to take Muna far because we're targets, but she just needs to go. Like, she just needs to go. And I think he just completely switched gears.
Well, Brent in the chat says it's because some members of the jury were cheering wildly for some players.
There you go.
Which we heard some of at the end of this episode. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that. Not the most strategic move to cheer for the player that you're rooting for when you're on the jury. I don't know who it was, but yeah, I don't think it helped.
And when
I feel like,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No, you're good, Jessica.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and I feel like that's almost like for future seasons, that's something you could do as like opposite strategy. If you really want someone to be targeted, start cheering for him. Because that would be my first thought. Oh, everybody in the jury likes them; they have to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mistake that players make constantly when we watch on Survivor and Big Brother, like. On their way out the door, I'm never voting for you. I hate you so much. And it's like, you're helping them in the game. Like,
yes.
Of course, the great Mitch Moffat leaves Big Brother Canada 4, and he says, hey, if you leave this person in, I'm campaigning for them to win no matter what in the jury. That's how you hurt someone in the game. Yeah, certainly having the option to cheer for people is a great way to intentionally sabotage their game, for sure. So I'm sure I would be so pissed if I was in the game in the jury. I'd be like, shut up! What are you doing? I hate you all. Don't cheer for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want your vote.
I was actually curious, Jessica. So during your season, was the jury so interactive? Like, were they so like cheering and everything during that?
No, they were silent. They were not allowed to speak. They would walk in, and it was really intimidating because they all had like red robes on and a mask, and they'd walk in and they'd stand there. And you would maybe hear, I do remember at one point, Dustin was like defending himself, and I did hear Cameron do like a little like, or something like that. And I was like, oh no, what's going on? Cameron's defending Dustin. He's got to go. Like, there would be like maybe a little sound or two, and I would note it, but never like clapping or outward conversation at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, I like that they're masked so you can't read their facial expressions. Because, we see this on Survivor too sometimes where it's like, they will, sometimes the jury starts to feel like, hey, we got to get our TV time. Oh, like biggest reactions possible. Everyone wants to be the new Eliza. And so I do feel like that gets a little much sometimes. So I like the idea of the masks, but yeah, I think maybe just a quick, like, don't make any noise when you're on the jury would be maybe how to do things. So anyway, Spencer is willing to go against Muna. Everyone is willing to go against Muna, including Billy after being told by Muna to go against Muna. Muna's play in this episode is that she is going to tell Billy to vote for her. She's going to tell Natalie to vote for her. She's going to tell everyone to vote for her. Knowing that she has an LOS, she's going to be open about the fact that she has an LOS, which she should because she told Jacob, and Jacob is no longer working with her. But the play is that she is going to try to bluff and say that she also has the battle pass. So don't even bother trying to pick me because I've got battle pass, and that's just going to piss me off. Which wasn't my favorite play for a couple reasons. One is that I feel like when players are able to bluff using advantages like that and also have advantages, like when Tony's got the god idol and Yule's got the god, like when the overpowered things come into play and you're able to bluff using them because you've had so many of them and you've had so many things, I feel like that's a sign that like production has maybe the balance is off a little bit. And then second, I don't mind it for Muna in terms of the sort of like last ditch effort kind of Hail Mary pass, like she might as well. But as we eventually discover, if she had just gotten Billy to vote with her, there was a small chance that she could have ended up, actually landing a decent outcome here and not have to use her LOS. I think if I was in Muna's position, my thought was at the time, I'm probably just going to do my best to try to get 2 votes on one person and hope that that people get a little weird about their votes, not use my LOS, and then hope that I can then defend against the battle match, because for sure, if she uses the LOS first, she's getting picked for the battle match. So, but either way, you have to pick one. You have to go with one, and it's probably not good. And this is another scenario where if more people were open to being dragged into the battle match, that play has more legs because there's more reason for other people to cast throwaway votes or whatever, which means your votes elsewhere have a little bit more chance of working. But then at the same time, there's more options to choose from, and it's going to be harder to hit a target. So ultimately, though, this is going to fail, and this is the final piece that I didn't love about it, because there's really not a lot of reason for it to succeed. Ultimately, like the incentives in place aren't great. She has reason to believe that it could work, given the fact that Jacob did not try to drag her in the previous round, which means that, like, hey, if they think it's worthless anyway, then there's a chance they won't do it. I think the key, though, in that round is that Muna never really claimed to be immune that round. Muna didn't say, Jacob, let me stop you there before you pick me. I just want you to know that the jury made me invincible, and if you try to pick me, it won't work, and it'll just piss me off. So don't even do it. Because I think if she had done that, he would have picked her, right? So it's a difficult one to pull off, because in the process of saying it out loud, you're kind of giving away that it's a play. So you have to be very, very subtle about it, I think, if you want to pull it off correctly. And you have to have just the right amount of, like, don't do this because of this. And then also pulling back, like, but go for it if you want. I don't care. Go for it. It's gonna be tricky here, Jess.
Yeah, I think especially with it being like the last round of advantages and everything, like people knew that everyone's gonna be throwing out advantages, and it wasn't like I'm nervous about this or I'm nervous about that. And I like Natalie, especially, was saying Natalie was okay with battling. She said, I'm ready. So I just think like it was a last ditch effort. What else could she have done? She knew she would probably the vote. So I see what she was doing, but yeah, it wasn't her best move.
Yeah. Isaiah, what do you think?
I do have 2 thoughts. So one, I think Muna was specifically just trying to play off of paranoia. And I think if it had a slither of a chance of actually succeeding, maybe she should have did it during the battle ceremony or like extremely last second, so you don't give these other players like enough time to like really develop like backup plans. Like you see Josh and Spencer like, all right, well, we can just do Jacob, so maybe she should have waited a little bit longer. Or if she really wanted to be chaotic, I mean, it's low success rate, but like she could have just went back and straight up told Natalie that Jacob told them to vote her right after she revealed this information. So maybe one of those 2 things, but still, it's a very small chance of actually succeeding.
Yeah. I agree, actually. I think that, a last second kind of let's say, the votes fall on Jacob. Jacob is like, well, Muna, and maybe a small chance, if she's confusing enough about her wording, she can kind of imply like, well, Jacob, you remember the last time we were about to go into a battle match? Guess what? And then, I don't know, there's a chance that he's just like, crap, I guess Natalie then, without double checking, right? Like, that's more likely to me than like, don't you do it because I've got a thing. Don't even try. So you never know. But there's also, there's a lot of talk about like, oh, is this against the rules? She's using production as a strategy. I would personally say this is not against the rules. This is very similar to in Survivor, pretending you have an idol. Putting something in your pocket and being like, oh, what's this? I don't know. And it's very similar in Survivor when you're trying to pretend you have an idol. Like if you say, I have an idol, don't even bother trying to vote for me because I've got one and I'm going to use it. people are probably still going to vote for you. But if you just stick it in your pocket and you just kind of like let people see it, then they're like, oh, wait a minute, do they have an idol? Oh, wait, now what? So it's tricky, but it's much more akin to that, I think. So the not using production as a strategy especially stems from Big Brother, where powers are given out, and these powers could be anything. And so the classic example is Jessica in Big Brother 19, who has the halting hex power, and people know that she has the power, and she lies about what the power can do. And that's against the rules, because there's no way to double check that. There's no way to confirm that. So basically, she can say the power does whatever she wants, and nobody can know the difference. And in order to, get through it, they basically need to assume she's lying. It's just a massive disadvantage to the other players because of how production sets up the game with these random powers. I would not say that this is one of those situations, because that power was potentially in play, and all she was doing was pretending that she had it, and they knew the rules about it, and she wasn't pretending that it was also like, and also it lets me just choose who loses the battle match as well. So watch out for that. Like, that would have been against the rules. Ultimately, though, it does not end up working. And when Jacob is voted out, he is going to choose Muna to face off against in the battle match. And the fated battle of Jacob versus Muna has finally arrived here, Isaiah.
They manifested it for sure. No, I thought it was a cool setup with the, they have to move the balls and everything, and basically spell out the word. I thought it was funny how basically, since they thought it was like another sponsor challenge and it would be another like medical term or something, but no, I liked it. I thought it was good.
Yes, I liked this challenge. There were a couple of things. So the first part of the challenge is that there are a series of 4 baskets with a bunch of colored ping pong balls, and they have to sort them all. This is like, hey, do some chores for us. We want to make these prettier. But I really, the visuals for this were pretty fun, because it was fun watching Jacob just kind of like swapping his hands, like going two at once, and you can sort of see the progress as it goes. Then they have to take, I believe it was 9 letters from the ping pong balls. They have to find the ones with letters on them, take them off to a table, and unscramble them into a word. This is where it got a little trickier, because it was hard to see exactly what they were doing on the ping pong balls, but they did a pretty good job. Especially from Jacob's side, it looked like he had gotten nothing. You go over to Muna, and even though you can't really see Muna's words, and this is so key because we haven't really gotten this too much so far this season, but she's going to talk us through exactly what happened. So even though we can't see it, we know what's going on, and we know her thought process, and it really seems like she's about to get it. And right as she seems like she's about to get it, Jacob is like, manifested. What, manifest or manifested?
I think manifest.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was surprising, and it was dramatic, and I knew that it ended when it ended, and I thought it was great. I thought they definitely nailed this one.
The one thing I will say, so I'm starting to see like a pattern almost with these battle matches, where the person who's on their way out usually starts saying like how strong they're doing in the competition, and like they just talk about their journey, and then the other person talks about how they're struggling, and then last second, like it just goes the other direction. So that's one thing that I will say. Like, I think the editing direction needs to like change up a little bit in terms of confessionals, but yeah, in terms of the challenge and just the narrations and everything, I enjoyed it a lot.
I loved the competition. This was my favorite battle match competition so far this season. I thought it was like engaging to watch. I liked that it had 2 parts, so you could catch up if you're falling behind. And I also thought it was so funny when Jacob said, he's like, I don't know, is there usually an F is at the beginning or the end of a word. After he said that, I sat there for like 3 minutes besides manifest, trying to think of a word with an F in the middle. I'm like, he's kind of right. And I just thought that comment was so funny.
Yeah. I can't think of one off the top of my head, so.
Right. Me either.
Yeah. So there it is. Muna is going to lose, and this is going to be our final five: Jacob, Natalie, Josh, Billy, and Spencer. And I think that from what I've seen, obviously Muna was a bit of a polarizing figure in the game. I think most people tend to like Muna the person. I think a lot of people sort of disliked her role in the game as the returning player who kind of got a lot of advantages. But and then there was I didn't love her speech here at the end when she was like talking about how it was a cowardly thing to take out big players, and how the jury's full of sharks, but nobody in the game is a shark because they're trying to take her out. And it's just kind of like, what are you saying, that you want them to be Nicole's and Enzo's? Like, are those the shark? Did you say yay Nicole and Enzo, keep Cody in because he's the shark and it would be mean to take him out? Like, I feel like it's again, like, perfectly fine to have that as a strategy in the game to set the tone in the game, but don't reflect those statements in confessionals, right?
See, okay. See, I can't tell if she was just trying to just push that narrative out there just to I guess maybe scare the players at first,
right?
And then maybe
yeah.
just the confessional was just just to reflect on what she was saying out there. But yeah, I mean, I see your point of view. I just think that I don't know, I do think that there's a hint of just you got to play the role and the TV show and all that.
and I'll say this too, for as much as, of course, we can criticize the statements, but but when you're playing a game and you're in deep, right, and you this isn't line of argument that will benefit you, you tend to live it, right? It tends to seep into you a little bit, and you're feeling passionate, and you're just you see this all the time because we see this constantly where somebody will be voted out. That was such a dumb move. I can't believe they evicted me. They're definitely gonna lose, those morons. And it's and then after a few days you're like, nah, yeah, they got it right. Yeah, that's and she hasn't had a few days yet. This is all in the course of 5 days. So who knows what kinds of actual opinions you hold when you're outside of the very, very intense context of the game. So overall, I think that there were probably a lot of people that were kind of okay, well, now we don't have to sort of focus on this whole should there have been a buyback and how many powers were granted and how fair was it. We've gotten to the final five. Everyone's on a pretty equal playing field here, and we're heading into the finale next week with 5 people left. And Jess, are you excited?
I am so excited. I feel like we really could see any of these 5 players make it to the end. They've all played well. They all have a chance still, somewhat of a chance still. I just feel like this finale, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm so excited to see how Billy reacts to not having Muna, how Jacob reacts to not having that rivalry of Muna and Marcelo. He just got over 2 rivalries. How's he going to come back into this game? I just think there is so much left unsaid that I cannot wait. I feel like this finale has to be 3 hours long, right?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I was taken aback myself. I was prepared for 11 episodes, and then all of a sudden I was last 2 episodes. So oh, all right, well, yeah. We only had so many spots, I guess, to talk about this. So next week, I believe it's the finale. I think we'll have a full round at 5 that will probably be shorter, like this one was, and then that would be my guess at least. And then we'll have the final 4, and then the final 2 speeches and jury vote, and hopefully some kind of. They have a little bit of room to have some closure, I think, as well after the vote and stuff. That would be nice if it's there. But yeah, I would expect those 3 things, probably none of them by themselves or as long as a typical episode, but combined probably make for I would expect like an hour and a half. But it's part of the fun of this is the premieres that Audrey does is that if you're watching it live, you have no idea how long the episode is. And that's kind of fun because, you know, one of my least favorite things about watching shows often is that like I often try to not look at how far I am in the episode because it almost feels like a spoiler sometimes. And so the fact that it just could, I don't know, there could be an hour left or there could be 10 minutes left. I have no idea. I like that.
I agree. I think that it definitely gives just like I feel like I'm along for the ride with the players. You know, I'm not just like some person that's just sitting in front of a TV and just waiting for an hour to pass by. Like I don't know if it's going to be like 2 hours. I don't know if it's going to be an hour 30 or 40 minutes. You know, I no matter what, I'm just enjoying. I'm just here for the ride and I'm enjoying it.
So. That's basically where we are. Anything else from the episode that you guys really wanted to talk about? Isaiah, do you have any particular thoughts?
No, I think going into next episode, I'm very interested to see what the dynamics look like. Like you see, oops, sorry, I'm getting a call. But you're starting to see like Josh and Spencer, they're starting to become a thing, and then you're starting to see Jacob and Natalie, like I guess they're retightening their bonds, and then you got Billy as that middle piece. So it's like, does Billy get picked off and then they just go to the final four, or does one side try to grab Billy, or does one of the duos break up? Like I don't know what's going to happen. So we've seen Jacob literally have a willingness to throw Natalie's name a lot, so I just don't know what to expect, and I'm just really excited.
Jess, any thoughts from the episode? Any final thoughts on the episode?
Just one thing I do have to say, the people that do the music, I absolutely was obsessed with like the slow motion piano version of the final song that's usually at the end of the episodes during the montage of the players. That was so good. That was so cool. It came off so professional. I was obsessed with that. So bravo to you guys, but that's really all I
that was very well done. The you know, taking the typical like end of the episode music and you know, kind of stripping it down. I thought that was really well done. What I did not appreciate, and this is just a very personal note, was the Sequester mini music that happened during the like for anyone that's played, maybe you're not like me, but I get flashbacks of stress anytime I hear that music, and I do not appreciate it just coming out of nowhere. Okay.
So true.
So there we go. Okay, let's wrap this up then. Let's talk about these final five, and let's talk about how we think the rest of this is gonna go, and make some predictions. All right. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Well, let's start with. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, Jess, on Natalie in particular. I've seen a lot of people make comparisons with you and Natalie, especially as she starts to potentially reach the end, and we're potentially talking about like, will the jury respect her game? How have you felt about Natalie so far?
I love Natalie. I actually did a draft with some people from my cast, and she was one of the people in my draft. So even before the episode started, I was rooting for her. And I really loved her gameplay. I think, honestly, she probably thinks that a little bit. She's probably in the back of her head like, oh God, Jessica played an under the radar game last season. No one respected it from the jury, so I can't let that happen to me. So I'm actually curious if she thought that. But I think she's more respected than people realize, and I think that she didn't really have necessarily a good read on how some people looked at her. Like she was like, oh, Muna definitely doesn't want to work with me. She knows I was going against her, and Muna's like, hey, we're from the same city, I want to work with you. And then Josh, she's like, oh, Josh totally saw I didn't go to his stand thing, and then Josh is like, hey, you topped me off there, like thanks, you're the reason I'm safe. Like I don't think she realizes that people respect her more than she thinks. So hopefully that if she is in the final two, that's not shown through her speeches, because I felt in my speeches, I was watching them all and they were all giving me looks like, some of them were like, I'm not voting you, I'm yawning, like I'm rolling my eyes, and I'm like, please listen to me. So, and it came off like too aggressive in my speeches. So hopefully she doesn't do that, but that was very long-winded, but that's my opinion on her.
Yeah, well, do you think it's possible especially with, somebody like Spencer potentially on the jury, who we know has this opinion. Is it possible that there are some people who, having watched season 3, even if they aren't of the opinion that you got robbed, at the very least, probably were of the opinion that, the jury did not see what she did, and even just the fact that Natalie is also blonde, and like it might be this really, like, they might be reminded and might give her extra consideration, or at least a second look, to be like, you know what, let's not cast judgment too quickly. This is what happened to Jess. Let's make sure we don't get this wrong.
I hope so. I would love that. Natalie, give me some redemption here and be you win and show everybody that tiny little blonde girl that's working under the radar can win, because I couldn't.
All right. Isaiah, what have your thoughts been on Natalie so far?
I think Natalie personally is one of the best positions in the game, and I've been a fan of her game like literally the entire season. I think that jury twist last episode like definitely help open people's eyes, and I just think that she's like one move away from like nudging people into her corner, so I think she has a shot to win the game. It's literally just like one little nudge, that's all she needs, but I'm rooting for her.
Yeah, honestly, I'm hoping she doesn't make it to the final 2 to lose, because I feel like that, I mean, granted, I think that there's a case to be made for, anyone there, except Spencer, next to Natalie. But I just wouldn't want that for her. I feel like she deserves better than that. And honestly, I think that if she gets there, I do think she has a very good chance. I mean, we saw what kind of speech she's capable of in that round where they pitched to the jury. And she knows how to articulate her game. She knows how to show a confident front. And if the jury is willing to be open-minded, I do think that she could probably out-talk anyone in the final 2, apart from Josh, who would, I think, be able to match her in terms of that kind of speak, right? So in terms of like showing off, like, hey, I was a strategic agent in this game. I, controlled my own fate, impressing the jury in that way, which I think is part of what she needs to do. I think she's very capable of it, especially, Billy is somebody who really can appeal to emotion. I haven't really heard her explain her game in a strategic way too much. It's all about connection, loyalty, which means that kind of opens the door for Natalie to have the strategic lane, which I think would be good. That's sort of strategy versus social, which puts her on equal footing. Jacob, I think, has both strategy and social, but his social game has been kind of messed up by some of his strategic game, and he might have a lot to answer for. And I think that he will probably have some trouble in the final 2 because he will be put on the defensive, and that's never a great place to be. And then Spencer, he can make speeches, here and there, but unless if he brings up coronations, I'm just not sure it's gonna work. So, like I said, I feel like there's a decent shot there for Natalie, and I've been very impressed with how she's managed to make it through the game. Both her and Josh, who really started at the bottom, and very, very successfully worked their way into the game and operated well. Speaking of, Josh is another person I'd be very happy to see win. I've been so impressed with him strategically and socially. He makes the one blunder early on where he goes to look for an LOS when there is none. Apart from that, he comes into the game, no connections, in a house full of all kinds of connections, gets voted out first, but chooses the right person in the right way, manages to win, gets an LOS, never needs to play it all season, and immediately recognizes the power structure in the game, buddies up with the people who are in power, and using that position just like spreads out his tentacles and is just pretty much locked in. I haven't seen like a ton of control throughout the game, but like that's impossible. Like I've never seen anybody control a game of Sequester. It's not really the game to be controlled. But even so, he's had a lot of influence over the direction of the game thus far. and has certainly kept himself safe once he managed to get some kind of footing in the game. On top of that, he knows how to articulate it well. He seems to have the most amount of connections left. He is the least targeted person. His only worry, I think, is like if he ends up in the end with Billy. That's, I think, his worst case scenario. He ends up in the end with Billy, and the sort of not connected versus connected thing really comes back to bite him. But as long as he can avoid that one outcome, I think he is a prime candidate to win here, Isaiah.
I agree. I think Josh's game is very clean. The only thing that scares me is two things. One, when Muna first came into the game, she was stating how the jury doesn't really give credit to a lot of other people about what the stuff that's going inside, because for the most part, people have been going through battle matches. So like, in hindsight, the strategy to some people's eyes didn't matter. So hopefully that's not going to be used against him. But the second thing is I hope he doesn't use the fact that he didn't have to use an LOS as like his main talking point, because
hopefully
I think
he watched Big Brother 20.
Exactly. I think of Tyler, like that's exactly like that. My mind went straight there. So, but I like Josh's game. I think it's very clean. It's very under the radar, but in your face at the same time. And I would not mind seeing Josh win.
Yeah. How do you feel about Josh?
My winner pick right now is Josh. I just think he has played the most well-rounded game, and I love that he came in with no connections. Pretty much every single other person there had a connection besides him. So to go in there and everybody else has an advantage besides you, and then you are the first vote out, and to come up from that is just amazing. And I've loved him and Billy's partnership this whole season. Like, it's been low-key enough, but they've been loyal to each other, and it's just been like a great storyline there. I love Josh's game. I think he's strategic. I think he's funny. Put him on another show. Big Brother, call this guy, because I think he's great.
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree with that. All right, so then we've got Billy. If you're asking me, I would say Billy is my winner pick. If I'm making predictions, my prediction would be on Billy. I think that, like I said, she does need to survive the final five, but it's very possible. I mean, she's got Spencer probably, and even just with one vote at the final five, with the way the twists often work, that's probably enough. And even then, even if she does get voted out, she just win one battle match at final five, and she's in the final four. And like I said, probably not going to get dragged at the final four, which means she only has one piece of the final four to get through, and that's the initial vote, which is usually pretty easy to get through. In fact, when I played my mini to make me so stressed out, I intentionally tried to go into the final four as the biggest threat, because I knew that the votes would get put against me, and that I'd be able to tie it up. And then when you spin the wheel, the people who get the votes are not on the wheel. It's the people who cast the votes onto the other people who got no votes. They're the people that are vulnerable, which means if they try to vote Billy out, she will end up being safe from the wheel, and probably also safe from the drag, and then we'll end up in the final two and win the game, which tells me that not only do I feel like she is the most likely to win at this point based on those things, but I also feel like edit-wise, if we're trying to read the edit, I've kind of felt this way for a while, but and I've seen people talk about it for a little while, but I've felt like there's been a big push. Now, Audrey likes to surprise people. Audrey doesn't like to be predictable. So it's very possible that she's been tricking us all, and I'd be tricked. But I'm feeling the Billy. I'm feeling it, Isaiah. Are you with me?
Well, real quick, I wish I had your mindset, because I played Wheel of Doom and I got literally wheeled out at Final Four, so that stung. Yeah, I think Billy right now, position wise, she's just great. I think literally the only person that could potentially take her out is like a Natalie, if like Natalie gets voted out or something in some universe, and she's like, all right, I'm dragging Billy, because like we've seen this feud between these two like really build in this edit as well. The past couple of episodes, they keep saying final six, and I mean it didn't happen final six, but we keep seeing how these two just keep butting heads. They just keep like lying to each other. They keep speaking about each other confessionals and to the jury. So in the back of my mind, I think that there's going to end up being a battle match between these two next episode. But I mean, if we don't see it, yeah, I have a hard time seeing Billy lose.
I could definitely see a battle. I mean, assuming everyone's playing somewhat optimally, they would probably vote out Billy at 5. And then if she has a choice between Spencer, probably don't want to choose Spencer. He's won 3 of them. You know, take out size, athletic ability, whatever. He's won 3 of them. Jacob has now won 2 of them. And then you have Josh or Natalie, who have both won 1 of them.
Actually, he won 3.
Jacob won 3. Oh, that's right. He was voted out before too. Wow, yeah. So Jacob has also won 3. Wow, that's interesting because you don't look at Jacob as a 3-time battle match winner in the same way that you do Spencer, because it wasn't 3 in a row.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to point out, though, if he makes it to the end. Anyway, you probably don't want to choose either Jacob or Spencer. So you're probably choosing between Josh or Natalie to begin with. And I could easily see Natalie being the choice because she likes Josh a lot. Why would she want to battle match Josh? So that seems to me like potentially the most likely outcome, even just looking at the game. And then all she needs to do is win that battle match and she might win the game. So there it is. All right. Speaking of Jacob, 3-time battle match winner. Jacob's such an interesting character. Jacob is the person as well that I just feel like this guy needs to be on a cast of an actual like a TV show. He needs to be on all over the place because he has given us everything. He has given us the Cody Calafiore, like running the show, 1,000%. Everyone's friends with me. He has given us the Dan Giesling just like orchestrated move, and now he is giving us the scrappy, dramatic underdog. And he's compelling in every iteration of this. I think that despite the fact that I do think he has made some mistakes along the way, some potentially big ones, his move against Muna was beautiful. Wasn't the most perfect move, but it was wonderful to watch and wonderfully orchestrated. You can tell, like, it's the kind of move that's like really, really smart. It's just like not all the way there, and because it's so ambitious, the fact that it's not all the way there means it's basically a failure. But like most people wouldn't be able to get that close, if that makes sense. And now he's just in this spot where he's just like all over the place. And so I feel like you might look at him as not as strong a player as he actually is based on the recent results. But despite that, I could still definitely see him making it to the end and having a great case to win. He was so successful in the beginning, and he managed to survive throughout all of this adversity. Whether or not you want to say that he caused the adversity or it was thrust upon him by the battleback and the situation there, but he still has some friends on the jury. I think he's got at least a couple of them left. And he typically can speak pretty well for himself. Again, I feel like the problem is that he might get put on the defensive because of the actions that he took in the game. And it's particularly difficult, I think, to defend against them because his biggest betrayals also were his biggest failures. So it's not even a case where it's like, I betrayed you, but I had to get me here. It was like, yeah, I betrayed you, and then I had to win a bunch of battle matches because of it. But now I'm here. So it's a tricky one, Jess.
Yeah, I think something that's good and that's going to help Jacob is, weirdly enough to say, is that he did go back on his like 2 loyal people in the game, like Muna and Marcelo were 2 people everybody viewed that he was working with. So I think going into the final 4, it's like, okay, like with Billy, I'm worried about her going into the final 4 because she's close with Josh, she's close with Spencer. Like they all think that they're her number 1. So when she goes into that round table and she has to discuss and start calling people out, feelings are going to be hurt. Whereas Jacob Jones is coming in and like even Natalie, who he's working with, she doesn't really fully trust him. She's like, he might take me, and Spencer doesn't fully trust him. And I just feel like they all don't have this like loyalty to him. He's kind of like a lone wolf. And I think that's going to help him. I really do. I think in the final 5, no one's going to want to take him really out because yes, he's won 3 battle matches, but he's kind of alone in the game. That'll bring him to the final 4. And then at the round table, he doesn't have these like tied loyalties that he feels like he needs to stick with, if that makes sense.
It's true. And, you know, if he does survive the final 5, particularly if he survives it with Natalie, I feel like that could be an okay spot for him because, you know, depending on who else is there, like, honestly, for Spencer, you like Billy leaving is pretty good. You know, Spencer being in the final 4 will probably mean that most people want to take Spencer or Natalie. Josh is probably going to try to get the votes on you, but if Natalie doesn't go along with it, that's a good thing. And then if Natalie leaves, she's not dragging you. She's probably going to drag Spencer or Josh. Either way, you've got a decent chance. If Spencer ends up leaving, is he going to drag you? I don't know. Depends on how you treat him, right? So I do like. There's definitely a path here for Jacob, but it is going to be a tricky one. What do you think, Isaiah?
You know, it's interesting to see the evolutions of Jacob's game since it was literally like a week. And he's trying to play like this Machiavellian game. But it's like, I think right now, the biggest obstacle in his way is the jury. Like he obviously, when it comes to resumes, he has the biggest resume. But assuming he doesn't sit next to someone like a Billy in the end, or honestly, gathering jury votes is going to be a little bit of a problem, especially if it's like next to like a Natalie, for example, because one, you got to get around Muna's entourage. It's Muna, Rachel, Shireen, and Billy, assuming Billy's in the jury with them. And then you got to hope that Marcelo isn't still angry at you. You still got to hope that, I think Jay West, judging off of their Twitter interaction, seems very close to Muna. So you got to also hope that Jay West isn't voting with them. You got to hope that Katie, who said that she has respect for Natalie's game, is going to vote for Natalie, you know? So I think as long as he's not sitting next to like a Billy or Natalie, like he has a pretty good shot. But I think that those two people specifically are going to be difficult. Like you even heard Muna say this episode, like, I really want to see a woman win this game. And I've heard other players say stuff like this. So he really needs to sit next to either Spencer or Josh to even have a chance.
Yeah. Now, for what it's worth, I interviewed these people before they entered the game, and this was a big part of my questioning was, what do you respect in the game? What will you be like as a juror? Can you respect people stab you in the back? You know, all of that stuff. And most of them were all like, yeah, stab him in the back. I'm a backstabber. I'm going for it. Will I respect it? Of course, because I'm going to do it. Now, does that mean they actually will?
No,
probably not. But I got it on record, right? All right. We already kind of talked about Spencer at this point. I do feel like pretty good chance that Spencer's going to survive the final 5. It's just a matter of can he survive the final 4, especially the drag. And that's going to be the trickiest spot for him, I think. And then even if he does survive, can he get the jury vote? It's definitely looking like an uphill battle for me. He seems to me to be the least likely to win. And personally, I feel like with a season that is so full of very strategic players, it would probably be the sort of least representative strategically of the players left to win. But and it's hard to see. It's hard to see the jury voting for him. It's still to me. But you never know. You really never know. So,
yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think him being voted out 3 times is just, if you have to be voted out 3 times in a row, it's hard to come back from that. And he did kind of come back from that, but enough to win, I don't see it. But maybe.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think Spencer's best chance right now, he needs a bitter jury against someone. And honestly, the only person that could even have like a bitter jury in that regard is like Jacob. He just has to hope that Muna and Billy are just very, very, very mad at him still. And they just hopefully been saying, you know what? We had bad blood with Spencer, but I mean, he's not that bad. Now, like, I don't think that's going to get by like Rachel or Shireen or anything, but yeah, I just have such a hard time seeing Spencer win this. Like, he either gets dragged at 4 or he just becomes a final 2 good at this point. Yeah, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that Jacob is probably his best bet in the final 2. Even though potentially, Natalie or Josh are slightly easier to beat in other circumstances, I feel like his only win condition, as you said, is kind of a bitter jury against the other person. And and so, like, if Jacob takes out Billy and Spencer ends up in the end with Jacob, and Billy and Muna and Rachel and Shireen are all pissed at Jacob, even though they were also pissed at Spencer. Now they're pissed at both of them, and that's kind of neutralized to some degree. And the fact that Spencer more recently was trying to work with Billy and Muna, whereas Jacob betrayed them, might recency biasy kind of push some favor onto him. So there's maybe a chance there, but man, it's tough road.
Battle. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's what we have for you for tonight. Look, we did a podcast that was, double the length of the episode. So we did it.
Let's go.
Looking forward though to next week. I think there's a lot to talk about there. Unfortunately, I was not able to get the exit interview with Muna here for tonight. I think it's I think she's kind of living in different time zones at this point, so it's tough to coordinate. But either way, we're heading into the finale next week. Very excited, and we'll see what happens. Again, the thing about Sequester is, even though I was kind of disappointed by this twist, I still feel like there's a lot to look forward to in this finale. We've got a lot of great players left to watch, and it should be exciting, Isaiah.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Honestly, like, this is my second season of Sequester. Season 3 was my first one, but I'm just having a blast watching it. Honestly, this is just a great time.
Yes. All right, Jess, where can people find you? And are you a shark?
You guys can all find me at Jess_Yaeger. And honestly, since Sequester, I think people that know me from season 3 would say, no, you're not a shark. But I think I'm becoming a shark personality. So I'm growing and I'm becoming a shark, just so you all know.
How does one become a shark? How have you developed your shark-like abilities?
I just feel like I'm more outspoken. I'm more willing to come after people's throats if they're at me. I'm less submissive in that sense. So I'm slowly getting into my shark ways. Maybe season 4 has made me into a shark. I don't know.
You got a taste for blood.
Yeah.
Okay. Isaiah, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and all that other stuff at 8ball bangers, literally the number 8 and then ball bangers. I have a podcast now called Silent Sequester Podcast. So I've been doing that as well. I'm hopefully going to be covering other shows eventually too, but I've been having a lot of fun doing it with like Dylan, Chanel, and then 2 other people who are actually on RHAP class of 2020, Geneva and Sasha. So, we're having a lot of fun over there.
It's a great lineup right there.
It's all they're great, awesome. Like, honestly, Geneva has been on here. You need to get Geneva on here too. I'm telling you, she's great.
I mean, let me tell. I was gonna do this after this podcast, but I believe she's in the chat right now. Geneva, if you're around next week, 9 p.m. Eastern, let me know. Also, should be the other person or one of the other people that should be joining me next week as well. Is Brent Walgamot, my previous co-host of the podcast. So look out for next week's finale podcast as we go over. I'm sure Brent will have lots to say. I'm sure we will have lots to say. So make sure you tune in for it. I will, of course. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. I'm actually probably going to go live shortly after this podcast ends. We'll play some Fall Guys or Star Wars or something. So you can find me there. And also next week on Sunday to watch the episode live. So you can watch that with me on Twitch. We tend to play some Among Us prior to that. And then there's lots of stuff throughout the week. I've been streaming every day. So So you can check me out there. It's pop culture quizzes, challenge watch parties, Big Brother Canada 5 rewatches, and playing games with Bruno and Kevin. Lots of fun things on Twitch, so find me there. You can also find me on Twitter at Armstrong Taran. And that's what we have for you. So thank you all so much for joining us. I'll see you next time.
Bye.